Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Why, hello there. Welcome back.
Happy Memorial Day, guys.
Oh, happy Memorial Day.
Did you know that Memorial Day was originally called Decoration Day? It was formalized by a Memorial Day order issued by the Grand Army of the Republic Commander-in-Chief John A. Logan in 1868. The modern proclamation calls un-Americans to observe Memorial Day by praying according to their individual religious faith for permanent peace. Well, we definitely do that. We want peace on this planet.
Oh my gosh, we need it. Not only do we want it, we need it.
There was an awakening in the 60s that came in. It started this whole snowball rolling, I think, of everything, including disclosure and all the revelations of that which is called the deep state. How deep is the deep state is really the question, and what is the deep state? When you understand that nations at this point in time are less powerful, really, than corporations, but understanding that it's all part of a control system narrative, which really has caused the death of so many people unnecessarily, in my mind. This is a song by Paul Hardcastle called 19. What is this about? Well, it's about the fact that in the Vietnam War, this is when the awakening was really starting to quicken. The average age of the person killed in the Vietnam War was 19. 19 years old. This is when people started to say, wait a minute, there's no real good purpose for this war, and it's a waste of life. Why are we even doing this?
You know, the reason that they do it, and this is, just what I pick up energetically, it doesn't mean anything, but there is a ritualistic type of vibe to it where they're celebratory of, giving something or sacrifices. I mean, it really does go to the depths of yuck.
Yes, well, we know those stories of in Mesoamerica and other places where they would literally have wars, and the tribe members that were caught of the losing tribe often they would literally cut the hearts out on their temples and offer that blood sacrifice. Again, there's all that talk about a third temple being built for what? For blood sacrifice. And we've talked about that before as well. Of course, that was, again, animal. But when you get down to it, blood is blood. And ultimately, it's something that's being done to placate certain energies. And, sacrifices never stop. They've just changed form. I think that's the thing I want to get across, because war is still a blood sacrifice. It is a blood sacrifice. When we look over here, which state in the U.S. gained the most resonance in 2025? When we're talking about Memorial Day, typically people go and get this feeling of patriotism and thinking about, your country. So when we look at the country, which is made up of different states, we see that there's a lot of moving going on, a ton of moving. Perhaps this is the most, inside the U.S. migration going on in maybe our history when we look at it. And you can see certain areas are losing a lot of people. If you look at the list, Massachusetts lost the most. Their net was, they were down 37.9%. That's a lot of people that are choosing to either no longer stay in Massachusetts, to not think about going to Massachusetts, or looking for greener shores. This is only natural, especially when driven by economic hardship. This is the things that we know. War drives migration. People have to get out of an area in order to survive when the bombs start flowing. And then also economic conditions can force people to move and look for greener pastures. New York down 28.2%, Maryland 27.4%, California 25.1%, Kansas 19.6%, New Jersey 17.6%, and then we even see Alaska after that. So, Yeah, people seem to be leaving certain states, the entirety of the left coast, which was gaining forever. Now, people are choosing to go to the Mountain West a lot more. Florida is still a hot zone. It's up 6.9%, but South Carolina, 79.7%. I moved to South Carolina in 2007. And boy, I don't even know if I'd recognize it now because the population has increased so much. And then coincidentally, Cindy was in Idaho where it's up 63.2%. She was born in Idaho back in the 70s. So, again, these two states, rapid change.
Yes, how about that? And I do hear the locals that do live there, they're feeling that uncomfortable squeeze.
This is what happens. Those that have always been there, when people flow in from other areas, it causes issues. Housing shortages happen, competition for jobs happen, and then just having a different way of life, a different dialect in some cases, different accent. All these things can lead to some clashes and some issues. I find it interesting too. Texas 23%, Oklahoma is up 26.4%, Arkansas 33.3%. A little Arkansas is growing. Even Louisiana, which has had nothing but population decreases because of the hurricanes. Most of the people in Louisiana live along the coastline. It's 70% of the people live in a 30% land area right along the coast, and the rest is pretty empty when you go up north. The biggest place is Shreveport. So when you look at Mississippi, up 18%, Alabama 36%, Georgia 13%, and it decided to move on me. That was weird. Tennessee 43%. Where are people going? They're going to where they could afford. I think that's what's really being shown here. You have two things. You have people that have to go to where they can't afford to go. And really with Cindy and I, we could, kind of work from anywhere. So why not go where it's the most affordable? And that's basically what we did. We would move into an area that was very affordable with a good growing season. That's pretty much it. So what I'm getting at with this is that inside these nations, they change a lot. People change a lot. They're not made of the same people that they originally were. This came up in my feed, why Texans are genetically different from other Americans. Well, again, you start with tribes. This is Mexico, and these are the indigenous tribes that were there.
Texas, and they did not speak the same languages.
And languages, again, when you look to Texas, it was originally, inhabited by those that we would call Native Americans, which I view as being survivors of a last reset. Because what do we see? We see that there are people living in harmony with the land in a tribal situation. This is what those that we call the Native Americans are doing. Yet at the same time, we had huge buildings, and we had what was obviously a more advanced culture living in cities, which was totally wiped out. This, again, has been referred to as Tartaria, even here in North America. There are literally maps that show the American Tartaria. So when we look at it from a different standpoint, and this does go into the different tribes there, and there was one tribe that they thought was totally extinct, but turns out, nope, they're still there. They're just mingled in and recategorized. Again, Texas has, it's under 5 different flags in a very short period of time. And when you look at it, too, when you go to Texas Hill Country, there's a lot of Germans, there's a lot of Polish, there's a lot of Czech. So there's a lot of Europeans that came into that area where so much of it was dominated by the indigenous people, and then the quote-unquote Mexicans, which again were mostly Iberian Peninsula people. Iberian Peninsula is Spain and Portugal. Again, it's this going back to the colonialism and the colonial expansion that we saw from the European capitals taking over other areas where people were living in a very different way in harmony with the land. And, this is, to me, so clear that what we are looking at, those people that we call Native Americans, just, again, referring to our North American continent here, they're really people that escaped the last reset. So then what does that make the Tartarians? That makes the Tartarians the people that were the last reset, if you know what I mean.
Oh, right. There's layers and layers of information that we have going on where people just simply cannot see. But the good news is the real light is shining through in the darkness, and people are beginning to understand the structure, and they're understanding everything that's going on so that they can make truer, better decisions for themselves and their families on how they want to navigate the 3D.
Pope Leo, artificial intelligence needs to be disarmed. Why would the Pope be saying that? Well, again, they have to tell us. They tell us exactly what needs to be done. They do it through movies and stuff, but then they also get us waiting for somebody to come and do it, whether it's, our star brothers and sisters, or whether it's the second coming, et cetera, et cetera. We're still waiting for White Pahana. We're waiting for, again, Kalki. It's up to us, because we are the ones that literally are coming in here and taking bodies in order to change it from within.
Artificial intelligence needs to be disarmed.
He told us. He told us, just simply because, why? Because it's going to, again, take over kind of everything.
Well, I think it's noble that they stand up there and say this needs to be stopped. But at the same time, on the cynical side of it, your privacy is going away. Everything on their phones, their tablets, their computers, their personal life, it's all going to be dredged up, not by another human, because there's those so-called privacy laws in place, but privacy laws do not allow much room for AI going in and snooping around in your devices. So although it is a noble cause, it's good for humanity that they push back on AI. I think it has its own self-serving aspect.
Absolutely. Meanwhile, Pope Leo, again, apologizes for the role of the church in slavery. And in his encyclical letter, calling it a wound in Christian memory. Again, they've apologized. I think they have apologized for siding with Nazi Germany in World War II, because, again, the Catholic Church did. But when you look at it, here you go. This is an apology for how they aided and abetted that. We've shared with you guys that when the first conquistadors came here and literally landed in places like Cuba and Puerto Rico and Hispaniola, they read a declaration, which again came from the Pope at that point in time. And what was it saying? It was saying that God has given these lands that you happen to be on to the church, to the power structure, to Christianity. And so, you guys are basically slaves and need to obey us. And of course, this was in a language that none of them understood. So, but they read it. They read it anyway. This is documented. This is part of the history. And then again, apologize for what was done later. That's also something they've done before. Anthropic co-founder Christopher Olah sounds the alarm at the Vatican. There's a real possibility that AI will displace human labor in a very large scale. If that happens, supporting those displaced will be a moral imperative of historic proportions. In other words, this is your basic universal income, or universal basic income, which is to be given again. And also, it could be an aspect of that that's going to be given to people if they've been damaged by bad decisions that looked like they were according to the science, logical decisions back at a certain time, and we know what that means, right? Why would they give us money for free? Well, because we are valuable. That's the bottom line. There's something missing in the picture that makes no sense. Humans are very, very valuable. That's the thing. They don't really tell you exactly why, because again, you don't want to build up the ego of those that you view as an asset, because they might leave. They might literally leave. Right here you see illegal aliens just went on a hunger strike at the ICE facility in Newark, New Jersey. And it says the leftists are storming outside the building, blocking the exit, send in the guard and make arrests. They work in such a way that they get us pitted against each other and literally get us calling for, lockdown type of things to happen against one segment of us. Here is the key. When we have a Memorial Day, we need to be thinking about the entirety of the human race, and also the races that are not human, that are suffering on the planet for the decisions of those that keep making illogical decisions in the eyes of the masses, but they're still there doing it. CEO of BlackRock and also of the WEF, Larry Fink, admits that trillions of dollars being used to build data centers, power grids, will come from ordinary people's savings accounts and pension funds. Says it's mandatory. You don't have a choice. Again, BlackRock it's a company. It's a corpse oration. Again, the root of corporation is corpse. The root of government is govern, which means control. Ment stands for the mind. Mental. So they're all about mind controlling us, psyoping us. Everything you see is an illusion. People are waking up to that. And, they're really falling apart in front of our very eyes. He says America needs to invest trillions in AI infrastructure spending, and that people will be forced to invest in it. There's also been reports of Europeans are going to lose, their savings because they got to keep funding the Ukrainian war. Or what's going to happen? China's going to take control if we don't. That's what he basically says at the end. It'll be China, and we don't want that. Well, what we don't want is you guys running anything. And the average people in China are like the average people here and the average people anywhere at their core. And the average people want peace. They don't want these nonstop wars. And they're just making us afraid of China like they found other boogeymen in the past. Make the Chinese afraid of those in the United States, make those in the United States afraid of the Chinese, play it off against each other. They keep collecting their trillions. The answer is to adopt a different type of monetary system in which they have no control. That's really the answer. Now, they want to give you a CBDC type of situation where they control everything. Then again, it's that revelation you cannot buy or sell unless you have the mark of the beast system on you, in you. 6G, et cetera, we know where that's going. When you look at the different Indian tribes, pre-Columbian, again, Columbus was a slave trader. I still see people trying to stand up for Columbus when he was a slaver. They took people as slaves. They committed every sort of war abuse, criminal actions that you could imagine. This was an atrocity, is what happened. These people were people that had survived the last reset. They were off. They were doing their own things. They were living separately as the system itself reset itself and then reasserted itself as European colonialism and started to take back, that which it had lost when people escaped out of the smart cities of that time, because the smart cities are in the future, but they're also in the past. The 13 United States of America, July 4, 1776. So you see how that grew and changed. This is the United States when you're looking in on battle sites, 1776 to 1800, those wars for freedom. Or was it all just a staged act to give, again, the illusion that here is your hope. It's a new hope. It's a new country. It's being formed by displacing people that resisted certain technologies and certain things in previous cycles, because this is all about cycles. And really, the history that we're given is, again, revisionist history, as we see a massive Louisiana there purchased from France in 1803. It doesn't look the same. I think the biggest takeaway you should have here is Hudson Bay Company's territory of Canada. Canada was almost entirely owned by a corporation. Look at that. Now that says a lot because, again, it was the corporations that fed the expansion of this European colonialism, which reclaimed, again, that which was lost when people escaped out in the last reset or the last big reset. Then we had 1861 to 1865, the Civil War, was that really all about slavery? Or was it, again, a twisting and a distortion? Was it maybe some states, people didn't want to have that expansion of the control system in place and wanted to do something different? I think, again, when you look at it, all these wars are tied together. Everything from the War of 1812 to, again, the Napoleonic War with Russia, to, there's wars that went on in what was the Balkans. When you look at this, it's been nonstop war. Really, is this war just simply a war on consciousness? Again, I do think we should remember all those that have suffered in these wars. Europe before World War II and after World War II, war changed boundaries. It always does, and that serves a function. What's that function? It's constantly making people, in some cases, long for the past, and in other cases, it creates this other type of friction because you have new boundaries, new rules, new laws, new people, mass migrations. Everything we've seen has happened before. Ottoman Empire, what was that? How about the Austria-Hungary Empire as well? These existed. Ottoman Empire became Turkey, and again, a lot of times they'll grab something from the past with certain tribes and rename a country. So Ottoman Empire, which was expansive and very large, was in decline, and then it gets renamed Turkey after the wars. And of course, Russia morphs into the Soviet Union, then breaks back down into Russia. It's nonstop, always changing, constant war. This is why when you realize the need to watch the genetics of different people to realize what is the progress going on in the war against human consciousness and the war to keep humans locked down, to keep humans manageable, controllable. And here you see, this is an article from way back in 2013. Sergey Brin and Ann Wojcicki split. Oh, why the Google founder and the 23andMe co-founders are now living apart. Yeah, that was the thing of the past. Again, isn't it interesting how these high-profile people constantly intermarry, just as if they're still blue bloods, right? This was an interesting article. Why cooking one meal a week at home reduces your dementia risk. And what's their answer? Well, it's because you have to multitask, because the toast might be burning while the sauce might be getting overly done, and you're hard boiling the eggs. You have to multitask is what they're saying when you're cooking in the kitchen. And too often we don't multitask. But also, they don't really mention the healthy aspects of cooking at home and knowing what you're actually eating, as opposed to going out where you don't know what you're eating. Or you don't also know the mood that the person's in that's cooking, or if they're sick and they're coughing in the back or what have you. If they're in a negative mood and they're mad and they're fired up and they're adding something to something you're going to be eating, understanding that our intention, our energies, our moods, all these things go into cooking. When you have a chef that loves those that they're serving, and they're putting love truly into their cooking, that can literally magically change that food. That sounds like it's impossible, but look to Dr. Emoto's, again, experiments with water, which clearly show that consciousness and writing things like love on a glass of water literally changes the crystalline structure of the water itself. That's how powerful we are. They don't want us to know the full extent of our power. When we are cooking in a loving manner and putting meals together for our loved ones with positive intent, and we know everything that's going into it, that's a very, very powerful form of magic.
Oh, it's one of the most beautiful gifts we have as far as being a human being is our ability to heal. We are very powerful healers, and everything we do in our lives, you can see it as it's either going toward healing something or it's going toward possibly tearing something down and starting over again. Our healing abilities through food, I can't tell you how like when Mike cooks, I mean, it's amazing. I really wish I could share his cooking at some point, whether we make sauces or seasonings or something. It's tangible. When he cooks, it's tangible. You feel that love. You feel that healing energy. It's amazing.
Well, the nurturing side of me is very, very dominant. The guides have said that I am like a rehabilitation specialist. That's what my soul is. That's what we've gotten from the guides. Now we're going to jump over here, and Snowden, again, the documents that he had leaked out, which got him in a lot of trouble apparently, says, if you remember this, Nazi aliens rule us. Wait a minute, Nazi aliens? Well, that's according to Iran's semi-official and frequently batty news agency Fars, talking about since at least 1945, the shadowy aliens known as the Tall Whites have had a base over there at Nellis, right across from where we were camping, and they've been controlling the agenda of the United States. Well, the United States did become an empire. We are an empire at this point in time. Again, the U.S. has had bases in 90+% of the countries of the world back in 2017. 2017 might have been the peak of the U.S. power, so to speak, or maybe it's still to come. There very well could be things going on. I do think ultimately we're still living out a war of the gods in which humans are used as pawns, and some of the gods do want to support humanity. Others of the gods, and again, they're nothing but beings with more understanding and more technology than we have. They could see the true history because we've been put into a story. We're living a storybook where they know the real history. Now, there are some of them that are just doing things for their own purpose, their own greedy purpose, which can be very, very nefarious. And then there are others that really have a lot of sympathy for us. But when you look deeply into it, Hitler's Germany was really looking for a lot of magical items and artifacts and secret knowledge. And, again, a lot of times when we go down the magical line of looking at things, we're really just discovering technologies that have been hidden from us. As I've said many, many times, when you think about that which is paranormal, it's not paranormal. We just don't get it. That's the bottom line. We don't fully get the nature of this reality, but people are picking up more and more. How about the thought of creating hybrid species? There is the thought that some of the grays are us from the future, grays that have gone into the system and become neutered, can't even reproduce on their own anymore, and are trying to stop that timeline from developing. There is that line of thought. Time travel. Well, again, if all time is happening simultaneously, can't we just simply choose to go back in time? We have gotten from the guides that, these worlds, every one of these incarnations, it's a world you can revisit at any time when you get out of the incarnated body. It's like you could come back and revisit, and you could say, what if that one night in 1989 when I took a right and I ended up getting into that car accident, what if I would have took a left? What if I would have listened to that voice? One of the shows that we still engage in that's out there in the mainstream is Survivor. And this past season, they had like the best Survivor people, some of the most, dominant Survivor players in history come back. One of them, Ozzy, really did seem changed. And he had gotten that he should play his immunity idol in a dream. He had a dream, and in the dream, it told him, play the immunity idol. He didn't play it. And he got bumped out, and he could have won $2 million, right? But maybe he did actually take the higher path because maybe he's starting to realize it's not all about money. I do think that's the case, as it feels like he was a very, very changed player from the other times he's played. So as we go down this road and more gets revealed to us, this is talking about Charles Hall, says that he lived among the Tall Whites for years because he worked, again, Nevada in the 60s with the Tall Whites, who gave us a lot of technology. This is why the U.S. has been able to be the power broker that it was. Originally, early on in World War II, NAZI Germany had the best technology, and they were well undermanned compared to the Allies. The Axis did not have the natural resources or the manpower, but they did very well, perhaps because of the technology they were utilizing, as well as other knowledge that was given to them and insight from, again, these gods, these ultra-terrestrials. And so, when you look at this and the experiments that were being done, it was a very, very dark thing. It was a very dark thing. And then when we also look at the people being abducted, there is a lot of dark stuff that's being done. It appears that most abduction phenomena have a lot to do with genetics. And we do see the same types of aliens over and over. We see, again, some insectoids. We see a lot of different types of grays. We see reptilians. And there's people that seem to be getting monitored, and they're looking at DNA changes, because the reality is your DNA is programmable. You can change your DNA. You are the most powerful agent of change for your DNA. And then the thought of hybrid species, it's always been about hybrid species. Dr. Moreau's island, right? Well, that was our past, and that's still going on today. When you see a lot of the cryptids that we see, some of these are escaped lab experiments. And some of these beings that we take as demons, or maybe as trooping elves from some of our mythology, they're, some are the grays that we talk about, and other entities. Again, doing experiments, programming certain people, and then if it's being done on one side, is it being done on the other side? I think the answer is yes. You have also the side that wants humans to be free. They just do it in a different way. There's certain ethical barriers that they don't cross, that they refuse to cross. But yeah, this is a war. This is a war on this planet. Because again, there are these entities, these reptilian entities, that claim the planet as their own. And it appears that, perhaps it is true that the first life forms on what we take to be Earth were reptilian-based life forms. So that they do have a claim in regards to that. And it appears that there was some sort of agreement made between various groups that would allow those reptilian beings to go inside the Earth, and also they're free to leave the Earth. But to allow humans to develop on the surface by themselves with as little influence as possible. It seems that there was some agreement. And Cindy did get that there was an agreement that just basically expired. And so we may very well be in a period of time where, at this point in time, as I'm making this, we don't know if there was another agreement put in place. There may have been, or maybe we're in a period that really is a complete free-for-all. I have been getting that feeling more and more that we're kind of in an unexplored territory right here.
Looking at the way things have gone since I heard that the agreement had been stopped, or the treaty was expired, looking at things now, you can only kind of imagine that all bets are almost off. It's kind of everyone for themselves, and these other beings are allowed to show themselves, but to what degree will they show themselves, I think, is up for them to decide. And I think these beings, being higher intelligence than we are, they know to still stand back and allow us to live our lives. They know not to interrupt, but also at the same time, other beings know that they can manipulate us, manipulate our frequency in different ways, and get us to make decisions we otherwise may not have made. But when you know yourself, and you work with friends and people who really care about you, you can get the right direction. So if you do have a tendency to float in the wrong direction, just reel in some really close friends so that they can help you. There could be a frequency disruption in your field, and sometimes all we need to resolve that is extra grounding. So I do feel that the treaty, since it was dissolved, the new treaty in place is they can show themselves at their will and at their pace. That's what I think is in place. I've yet to get confirmation.
Yes, and again, we share what we know, and you're obviously encouraged to really check out whatever channels you feel resonate with you. Again, each one of us is a unique lens of the one source. We are a unique fractal. So you see this little "you are here" again. When you look at the family tree, one of the questions that should emerge is, why are there so many different types of humanoid beings on the planet? Now, we're told that we evolved from apes. That's Darwinian evolution. There's obviously been an original creation, and that creation is top down. So what does that mean? It comes from the higher densities. So you keep going through different densities. You get to where it's just simply a pure ocean of consciousness with not really anything that you could say is really material per se. It's all about frequency. It's all about vibration. It's the interaction between light and sound. And again, we live in a universe of duality. When you look to all these different humanoid species, what happened? I think in many ways we're seeing reset after reset after reset. We're also seeing some species that, again, are just simply, they came here from elsewhere. This planet is a refugee planet. That's what it is. It's a refugee planet. Humans have been at war with AI throughout the galaxy for eons. This is really what we're talking about. Battlestar Galactica, again, the cyborgs, the machines coming after humans, Terminator, Matrix, they've told you the truth. I mean, it's a truth with a distortion, but it's up to us to figure out the distortions. So some of these were not inferior. And, again, we shouldn't look at any species as really being inferior, because we look to Cro-Magnon, we look to Neanderthal, we look to Denisovans. They were absolutely more in touch with nature and the land. Now, why do they portray them like this? I don't think that they were like this at all. I think it's almost the opposite. I think they give us, I think a lot of people have come to the conclusion that what they tell you, if you go the exact opposite way, you're much closer to the truth. You're much closer to the truth. So they should be making them look more cultured, more civilized in some ways. Atlantis, again, was a global society, and people came and went all the time in front of us from those civilizations that are inside the earth and also under the oceans. So everybody knew, there's inner earth beings, there's beings living under the sea, not just SpongeBob and Patrick, and then there's also lots of worlds out there that beings come and go all the time. All different size beings, there were fairy-sized beings and giant-sized beings, everything in between. And, when you look at it, there were a lot of genetic experiments and a lot of different species living amongst us, and we were not terrified of it. We weren't. It was normal for us. Again, I think to the chickens, when they see me in the morning, they're not really terrified. They know that, well, he's different than us. He doesn't have feathers, but all he ever does is bring food and gives us things and seems to be nice. So it's the same thing with the interaction with other beings.
Right. If when you do have pets and you have chickens and things like that, it can shift your perspective if you allow it, if you allow yourself to sit there. So yeah, I mean, looking at the chickens, they have no reason to fear Mike. At the same time, many farmers have chickens, and sometimes they use them for meat birds, but they still treat the meat birds really nice, and the meat birds only have one really bad day, but the farmers still love their birds. So it is a shift in perspective. If you look at things like, is that the way the gods treat us, and do they have their favorites yet they still have to cull? And if they cull, does that make them bad? What world are we truly living in? I think we could live in a world where we did not need to cull, that everything could be in balance. And I think one day we will go back there. We will go back to a state of complete harmony and complete balance, and then we will maintain there for a very long time. It's just walking through this part where it's so dark and it's so murky. Things can be so very confusing. All kinds of different opinions coming at you from every direction. We really implore people to find what resonates with them in their heart and in their soul. Also being mindful of the word resonate, because you might resonate with something, but that's only because you were raised with it, and that it feels comfortable to you. There's a difference between something feeling comfortable and something being right for you. So we do have a lot of figuring, a lot of untangling our web that we're currently living in.
The Guanches were the tall native inhabitants of the Canary Islands. They were just about exterminated by the Spaniards at the turn of the 15th century. That was, in my mind, European colonialism was driven by money and greed, but who put the carrot out there to do that? Ultimately, it's the system. What they wanted to do was to, again, eliminate what we would call indigenous belief systems, primarily. Primarily, they wanted them to get into a belief system that was controllable. And so, then you also end up with them coming into your monetary system and then becoming part of your political system as they become assimilated into the Borg, ultimately. They are thought to have been of Cro-Magnon origin. They had blue or gray eyes, blondish hair sometimes, again, blonde or reddish hair. I do think that they were survivors of Atlantis. Again, there's been so many catastrophes. Were they less than us? No. I think in a lot of ways they were more than us. Cognitive abilities, physical strength, Neanderthals and Denisovans were not inferior to Homo sapiens. So the thought of Homo sapiens wiping out Neanderthals and Denisovans, this is the system trying to say, hey, it's your fault, you did it. It's the system doing the same thing it does with Adam and Eve and taking a bite of the apple. Yeah, again, these different hominid species. Neanderthal, I was watching a video that came through yesterday. What if we had Neanderthals, full-blooded Neanderthals here to compete in, say, Olympic Games and stuff? There'd be a lot of them in which we wouldn't even place 10th, depending on how many, because they were far stronger than us. They were built more for this planet than we are. That is a telltale sign. We come from elsewhere, many different places. You have, again, chimpanzees. They're way stronger than us, and they might only be 100 pounds, but they're literally stronger than a 220-pound weightlifter. How can that be? Again, it's because it's more natural to the planet. It's been here longer. They had bigger brain capacity than us, Denisovans as well. They were not inferior. They were, in fact, more of a threat, and that's why they're not here, because the system got rid of them, just like it's doing right now. And this is the most dangerous thing you can know, is that what's happening right now happened in the past, time and time and time again. The difference is that we're on the ascension side of things. So where there's more light knowledge and more help possible from outside sources, and again, it's us that have to do it. You look at these different species out there. There were many. Heidelbergensis, how many of you are familiar with this particular one? Again, bigger, stronger. Why do we make it? Why do we make it? Again, we go back to 23andMe. We go back to Ancestry.com. We go back to the abduction experiments. And again, certain DNAs, as we know, can be targeted. It's just that simple. So some have merged into us, and others have just disappeared. And this one's talking about my wife is half larger than mine. Talking again about some of the shapes that we can see, the bone structure, the skull structure is still here. There's so many different species of humans, and it's also because we come from different planets and planetary systems. This is really wild. We were touching on this before. In the Ramayana, there's the monkey people, and there's tons of them at this point in time. Tons of them. And they help Rama and Sita and Lakshmana again in their battle against the Asuras. Who were the monkey people? That is really, really interesting. Some have said that maybe it was Neanderthal, and others have said maybe it was Bigfoot. Maybe it was, kind of all the above. There have been so many different species. They're if you haven't read the Ramayana, they're intelligent. What are they doing here? They're writing. What are they writing? They're writing sigils on stones. Hello, this is why we did what we did yesterday with sigil making and how to make sigils. Because we're just starting to relearn things that we knew and we utilized every day in things that seem to be paranormal, but it's not paranormal. It's just science. These beings were stronger than us, and they had more abilities than us, and that's why they're not here at this point in time. Many different species will choose to just simply move on, leave, go elsewhere. So when you see Hanuman, in no way was Hanuman inferior. Hanuman had amazing abilities, could do things like Superman, and literally led the fight all the time against the forces of darkness, and stayed through one period of time into another. He was one of those that we might view as immortals that came and stayed with humans through the darkest of times, and is helping us from another density at this point in time.
He does, and if you watch the shows, it's very cute because Hanuman can make himself big and small. And I really like that. It kind of panders to our childlike imagination, but it's also interesting because when he makes himself big and small, he's actually putting a frequency over himself. So at times, he's simply not seen. And that's what it means to be small. You're missed, you don't see it. So he has this mastering of his frequencies to help him navigate through the world of impossibilities while he was here. And these are attributes that if you call on Hanuman, you can gain certain frequencies and certain abilities through him, being a devotee. And I don't think you have to be a devotee. I think you can be someone who just admires. And if that's a frequency that you need, you call on that, that's something that you can receive. So to a degree, it's just the world that we live in now is not as magical as it was then, but we are on our way back.
Well, that's the part that's exciting, is we're heading back into the magic. We're heading back into the magical times. So that whole Planet of the Apes thing, what was that really talking about, when you get down to it? Because, again, if you look at Planet of the Apes, well, the interactions that go on there, not too dissimilar than that which we see with the monkey people who were Hanuman's people and humans at that time. Not that it was a war of them against us, because again, Hanuman Sugriva was the leader of his people, and he traveled the entirety of the known world of that time and saw, all the different beings that were here. And he also, as we shared, said that you shouldn't go to Antarctica. Nobody goes to Antarctica. Why is that? Because again, it's off limits for those that are aligned with, you might say, the Devic side of things. What's the Devic side? This is a war between the Devas and the Asuras, and really the Devas are taken to be angelic type of beings in service to the true, the true source, the true creator of all, which is within you. And again, when you look at this, it's been reinterpreted by the control system that you're worshiping these beings. What you're doing is you're calling on friends. You're calling on friends and allies to work with you. They are still there. They know the whole story. They're not mad at us for our sins per se. The times that we come up short, and because they know that every day we're completely bombarded in a single-minded way by the system to try to corrupt us into being more like it. So they understand we're in a tough place. We're not in an easy place. And, again, you call out and you ask for their help. That's what you're doing when you do the mantras. And there are footprints all over the world that are attributed to Hanuman and his people still there. Some of them are obviously faked, others aren't. When you look to Bigfoot is another being that has escaped the system by raising in frequency to where they can appear to be invisible. They can move their frequency outside of the range of perception of others. They could raise their frequency and disappear to them. And that is what we are going to be doing again as we go farther into the ascension process. By the way, we have lots of fossils and information on Gigantopithecus, which in my mind was one of the Bigfoot beings. So, just hang in there, guys. We're in exciting times. Do send out love and compassion to all beings that have fought in these wars without understanding what's really going on all sides, again, because the manipulation has been done to people of every single country, every single race, every single creed, every single division that you can imagine. We've all been pitted against each other. So the answer is really compassion and love and uniting together.
Indeed.
Look forward to your comments. Like, share, subscribe, hype if you are able to. Source bless and namaste.
Namaste.